let's look at it from a slightly different perspective. My statement is going to be this. Most clinical trials will continue to be performed at hospitals and clinics. How do you guys feel about that one? Two down and one up. So Rebecca, let's go ahead and start with you, and then I'll go back to the other ones. I certainly have been hearing for years that places like Rite Aid and CVS, these large chain pharmacies, could easily become clinical sites and start seeing patients there. I've heard about Walmart becoming a clinical site. I've heard about one sponsor company that was sending a physician to like a VFW and seeing patients there. And certainly other places. Here in Erie, Pennsylvania, we have these urgent care centers spread out all over town. They're not technically physician offices that have patients assigned to them, but they do see patients every single day. There's the opportunity there for a lot of different places to suddenly get into the clinical space. So Rebecca, is it your feeling that the expertise that exists in clinics and hospitals will still make them the preferred provider, I guess, for sponsor companies and CROs?
So it's not a matter of patient population or the clinical expertise, but it's the research expertise that I think is needed right now. So I think there needs to be a lot of change in clinical research in order for it to kind of decentralize and go to these little clinics in different areas. And I think that's a great idea, and we can probably touch a lot of different, patient populations that way. But right now, there's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of requirements that's needed from the site side. And I don't think, the nurse practitioner that's sitting at Walgreens is going to be able to do their daily job. And then on top of that, know how to be a research coordinator. I think that kind of takes away from the knowledge of the research coordinators, which we all know it takes, years to really become a great research coordinator. And so unless there's a lot of changes from the higher ups from the sponsor and the CRO side of requirements from the site side, I don't see that happening anytime soon.
So going back to the statement you made earlier, then sites are not going to go away because they have the expertise we need. I mean, certainly when I go to see my primary care physician, the amount of expertise I see there is not the same as what I see when I go into a CVS, even if I'm going for a flu shot or whatever the case is. Obviously, it takes some expertise and some knowledge to run a clinical trials that I do see in my physician's office that I don't see in some of these other places. So I agree with you on that one. Sam, could you shine a little light on this as well?
Sure, absolutely. So part of it depends on how you define clinic, right? Because to me, urgent cares, even Walgreens, CVS, all of those can sometimes fit within that definition. I am aware of a laboratory company that does clinical lab testing that is moving into having basically urgent care sites as some of their clinical sites. But I think that even goes back to some of the questions we had at the very beginning about how technology and the way that they're moving in the clinical industry is going to change the way we work. Could be that we start having research coordinators that are traveling around working remotely. Who knows what that looks like in the future? But I think that possibility is there.
And Chris, you're on the sponsor side here. If you engaged a CRO and they went out and found some sites for you guys, if they came back and said, oh, we're going to go into these pharmacies and make them sites versus going into a hospital or clinic, would you have concerns about that? Or do you think that's all going to start to merge together at some point?
I really think it will merge together. I also believe in 3 to 5 years, you will see CVS, Walgreens, and Rite Aid really move into this space. You might remember the expression they asked Willie Sutton, why do you rob banks? And it was a very easy answer. That's where the money is. And so why do you go to CVS and Walgreens to do, your studies? They know all about the patients. They've got the complete patient history there in terms of the patient's medications. And so in terms of getting referrals and getting patients into the trial, that is a fabulous place to think about going. Now, you might say, can they do endoscopies? Can they do bronchoscopies? No, they can't. But I can refer the patient out to get that information and get the clinical report back and make a judgment should that patient be included or not included, depending on the particular finding. So I do think you will see some movement away. I could foresee organizations like Rebecca being the hub and kind of controlling these different parts. You absolutely have to have a good controller and good oversight. And whether that's provided by a CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, or Rebecca, I really believe that's the future of where we'll find patients, i.e. your patient recruitment question.
So I guess my argument to that, since you're on the sponsor side, is, man, if you say the word satellite site, which is pretty much is what you're saying these would be, the sponsor is very against satellite sites. So what are your thoughts then on me being the hub and having 10 satellite sites at different Walmarts and Walgreens and whatnot?
Rebecca, you served up a softball. We're doing that with you. We're doing that with you. And so I am all for it, man. I need the patients as a sponsor. And I won't let you go 10 wide, but I'll let you go 3, 4, maybe 5. Now, it does cause some logistical problems for us, but, God bless you, Rebecca. I'm all about that.
So, Sam, let me pull you in one more time here. It seems like the closer we get to decentralized trials or completely decentralized trials or even hybrid trials, the easier it is for these sites, these non-clinical sites to be a part of it, whether it's Walgreens or Walmart or CVS. I love Rebecca's idea to have an actual site be above several of these other places, to still have that expertise in place there and the guidance to make sure they're doing everything they should. But as we get closer and closer to trials being fully decentralized or mostly decentralized, it seems like it's going to make it easier for other entities to get into the space.
I think that's absolutely true. I think that goes back to something I mentioned earlier about specialization, but I also want to put a fine point on, this is going to take really strong technology, and it's still going to take people.
And one last question on this one before we move on. Catherine is asking about the role of remote patient monitoring and patient-reported outcomes. Once again, if we move closer to that decentralized model, it seems like those technologies are going to play a much bigger role. Rebecca, any thoughts on those? So
sorry, I lost connection there. Can you repeat, or someone else jump in?
Yeah, Catherine had asked, as we get closer and closer to a fully decentralized model or even hybrid models, the role of remote patient monitoring and patient-reported outcomes becomes all the more important. From the site perspective, again, are you seeing that as well? And are those technologies going to play a much, much bigger role in trials as we move closer to that model?
Yeah, and I think that's something, so we conduct a lot of endocrinology trials, and so right now we have like glucose monitors or continuous glucose monitors that transmit the data automatically in real time to the site anyways. And so I kind of feel like that's happening now, where we're able to monitor the patients, or ambulatory blood pressure monitoring that automatically transmits. So there are a lot of devices and technology out there that allows that. In terms of e-pros and questionnaires, I think that kind of limits the patient population a little bit, because you have to make sure that the patient can utilize the device, be able to transmit the information from the ePro. So maybe you're not enrolling your 87-year-old into a study that doesn't know how to use technology. But I think that there are a lot of devices out there that can transmit that information in real time, probably even better than when the patient comes in every 2 weeks and sends their, brings their paper diaries in every 2 weeks. So I think that there's some good technologies out there that can support patient safety and monitoring.
Yeah, I'd like to add to Rebecca's comment, particularly paper where people are bringing their sheet in, their blood glucose levels, and you can see fresh blood on the side that they just pricked themselves before they walked into your office to do it. With remote monitoring, we're conducting a pain study right now. And those folks are expected to put in their daily pain score before 5:00 p.m. every day. What has been your pain for the last 24 hours? And we actually get a report if that patient misses it or is out of scope or whatever. And now we can provide feedback. And we're probably driving our sites crazy, because there are some patients that miss a day or two. And it's like, wait a minute, we need all of the data. So we ask the sites to follow up with the patient. Is something wrong? And very often you'll say, oh, I forgot, or my Wi-Fi has been down, but fortunately the data are captured. When Wi-Fi is up, it'll get submitted. But the bottom line is you can get real-time data, which I think is fabulous, and feedback to the patient.
Okay, and you're nodding, Sam. Anything you want to add to that, or should we just move on to the next one?
Nodding in agreement.